Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Chennai Storytelling Festival 2022 on Saturday, 26 February. This is the first event of the day. And Dana Sherry, I want to thank you very much for visiting with us. And I believe you're in California, right? Yes. So thank you so much for coming and telling us a story. So please introduce yourself fully, and I'm going to mute everybody, mute all. Yeah, thank you very much for visiting with us. Please introduce yourself fully and tell us about your work, and please tell us a story.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Eric, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Dana Sherry, and I'm a storyteller, and it's nice to say that to people who know what I'm talking about. I specialize in folk tales particularly from the former Soviet Union, from Central Asia and the Caucasus, and I have, until the pandemic, coordinated a storytelling series that highlighted folktales from that region. And we'll see what happens as things settle back down. But the story that I'm telling you today is not Central Asian. It is a tale that is an Irish legend that is set in Ulster in Northern Ireland in the 6th century. And it is a tale of Saint Finnian and Tuan McCarroll. And there are a lot of things that I like about this story. But one of the things that really spoke to me about it for today is the way that it speaks to a question that I know a lot of Americans ask themselves lately. How can I possibly talk to someone who believes things like that? And that question may have occurred to the future Saint Finnian when he heard that not far from him, in his very own home of Ulster, there was a man by the name of Tuan McCarroll who held to the old ways. And he knew that there were people like that, but he couldn't bear to think that there was someone so close, a neighbor of his own, that hadn't heard the good news. And so he set out immediately to the stronghold of Tuan McCarroll to tell him about the new faith. When he got there, he found that the doors were barred against him. But Finnian was not one to give up so easily. "I'll fast on him," he said. And with that, he sat down on the doorstep, and his fasting was fierce and terrible to behold. And he fasted all through the day and all through the night. But finally, Tuan relented, and he opened his doors, and he brought Finnian in, and he gave him food, and he gave him drink, and he gave him rest. When Finnian had recovered, he began to speak, and he spoke of his God. And as he did, he was filled with such light and such love that just as Tuan had opened his doors to him, so too did he open his heart. And Finnian spoke, and he spoke until he could speak no more, and he knew then that it was time for him to listen. He sat back and he said, "Dear heart, tell me of yourself, tell me of your life." "I'm an Ulsterman," said Tuan. "And they call me Tuan, son of Carol. But I am also known, in the days of yore, I was known as Tuan, son of Starm, brother to Partholon." Finnian sat back in shock. He knew his biblical history, but Partholon came to Ireland not long after the flood, in the time of Noah and the ark. "He did, and I came with him. And Finian's hair stood on end and his blood ran cold. He loved God, but he loved Ireland nearly as much, and he gave thanks that he stood in the presence of one who had lived all the history of that land. Beloved, tell me your story. Tell me the story of Ireland and of how it is that you are both the son of Carol and the son of Storm. And so Tuan began. 5 times invaders came to Ireland, and the first came 312 years after the flood, when Partholon, my father's brother, came with 24 couples. And we came and we prospered. We grew and multiplied until we were in the thousands, until one night, between sunset and sunrise, a plague came, sudden as a rising wind, and by the end of 7 days, all had died, save one. For in such catastrophes, there is always one who is left to tell the tale, and that one am I. I walked the hills and the cliffs of Ireland, hiding from the wolves, and the land was empty. The years passed until one day I looked out from the cliffs, and there in the bay, tossed by the waves, I saw the fleet of Nemed. And I rejoiced that I would no longer be alone, and I ran to meet them. But then I saw my reflection in a pool. I was naked. I was filthy. My hair was matted. My fingers were like claws. I was ancient beyond belief, wretched, hardly human at all. I went back to my cave. I hid from them, and I waited for death to come. And then one night, a dream came to me as I slept, and in my dream, I passed into the shape of a stag. Great antlers grew from my head. My pelt grew thick and gray. I was young and strong again in my dream, and when I woke, I had become what I had dreamed, and I became the king of all the deer herds in Ireland. Wherever I went, I was surrounded by my retinue of stags. And then one day, I remembered what I had been, and I went back to see the people of Nemed. But the places that had known them were silent. All that remained of them were their bones glistening in the sun. And I felt old age come upon me again. And I returned to the caves where I had lived as an old man, and I lay down to wait for death. And then one night as I slept, again a dream came to me, and I passed into the shape of a wild boar. And I woke, and I had become what I had dreamed, and I was young and fierce of heart, and I became the king of the boar herds of Ireland, and the earth trembled beneath the thunder of our hooves, and I challenged all who came before me, all save one. For the third wave of invaders had come to Ireland, those from whom the Fir Bolg are descended. And ever again and again, my memoried heart would bring me to watch them. And I would think bitterly. In the days of Partholon, I would speak in counsel, and my voice was sweet and wise. The women's eyes would brighten as they saw me pass, and how they loved to hear me sing. Me, who now wanders the forest with the tusky herd. And eventually old age came upon me again. I returned to my Ulster cave to wait for the transformation. And one night I slept my sleep, and I dreamt my dream, and I passed into the shape of a large hawk. And when I woke, I was that which I had dreamed. I was young and strong. I soared and I swooped. I hung like a living stone over the abyss. And I watched as the fourth wave of invaders came, the Tuatha De Danann. And I saw the battles that raged. I saw every sword that glinted in the sun, heard every shield as it rang. And the victory was with the Tuatha De Danann. But it was not to last forever. For in time, a fifth wave of invaders came, the sons of Mill. And I watched as they drove the Tuatha De Danann into the ground and closed Ireland against magic and wizardry. And again, old age came upon me, and I returned to Ulster, and I settled on a tree above a river. And I slept my sleep, and I dreamt my dream, and I passed into the shape of a river salmon, and I fell into the water, and I rejoiced. For the water holds you up, and it releases you, and there is no harshness within it. And I knew all of the ponds and the pools of Ireland, and I was pursued by fishermen, by hawks, by river otters. Always I escaped, but their claws, their spears, left their marks on me that I bear to this day. The days passed, and soon all the fishermen knew me. Then the day came that Carol, the king of that land, sent his fishermen, for the queen desired fish for her dinner. The fisherman came and he cast his nets, and I remember how he pulled me in, singing a song of the river and of doom. And he laid me on the gridiron, and he placed me before the queen, and she ate me entire, and I lay in her womb. And I remember the darkness and the sounds of things unseen. In a time I was born to her as a son. And when speech came to me as it comes to all men, I began to speak of all that had been in Ireland and all that was. And they said that I was a seer, and they gave me a name, Tuan, son of Carol. And that is the story that Tuan told Finnian of Moville that day. And many more he told in the week that they spent together before Finnian returned to his monastery in Moville, with his ears and his eyes and his heart filled with wonder, unexpectedly transformed, ready to become a saint. And as for Tuan, who is to say if he died in Ulster in those long ago times, or if he is there still in one form or another for the glory of God and of Ireland. And that is the story of Tuan McCarroll. Oh, Eric, you're muted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do you do with the parts of the story that involve shape-shifting turning into a salmon and being eaten, ingested, digested, and then leading to pregnancy and being born out of the queen. What I mean, do you take that on a shamanic level? Do you take it on a symbolic level, a poetic level, a historical level? Or how do you work with those kind of story elements?
Yeah, for myself, I think the answer has to be yes. That it's all of those. I'm comfortable with taking it all of those levels. One of the things that I find really fascinating about Ireland at that time, particularly in the 6th century, that there were two ways of understanding the world that coexisted more harmoniously than it would at maybe later times. That there was that dialogue, and Finnian is not the only saint to talk to someone who is a shapeshifter and to be transformed by the exchange. So I think that it is an expression of two kind of world views, two spiritual worlds coming together and having an exchange. And I think it also, so there's that. I'm also comfortable with seeing it on a symbolic level. I certainly feel like I have gone through profound transformations in my own life where I become something that is quite different than I was before. So there is that sort of symbolic, poetic transformation. I also love the animals that he goes through. It feels like a very masculine story. And as I mentioned at the outset, I'm more familiar with kind of the world and the significance of these animals in other contexts. But thinking of the Georgian context, there's of course the air and the sea as being the two other worlds. That you have going shamanic, you have the upper world, the middle world of humans, and then the water as being an entrance to a lower world. But the deer and the boar are two, at least for Georgians, a very, very masculine features. One is more almost chivalric. I'm not quite sure how to articulate the deer, but the boar is being that more kind of martial side, more instinctual, and these two really. So it seems in that sense it's very complete. It's a very complete sort of experience of the different masculine archetypes.
Jeff?
Actually, while in Celtic, a deer is masculine, the boar actually is feminine.
Oh, interesting.
You would think it would be the sow, but in our culture, the boar is symbolic of the Great Mother. It's actually a feminine symbol rather than a masculine symbol.
Thank you. That makes it even richer, right? Even more of a complete experience. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any thoughts, resonations? Timothy, I know you have many thoughts, but maybe too many to say at this point.
I really enjoyed all the transformations and the shape shifting and the dismemberment. Always fun, those dismemberments. Yes. So I was very much relating to it on a shamanic level. But one of the things that is so exciting about not just Irish tales, but being in Ireland is that integration of the old ways and Christianity or the new ways is still very much present in the land and in the people. And so this story just brought that all alive to me. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. If no one else has anything to add, we'll take this session to a close.